Hello students, good morning to all of you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Which chapter do we need to revise?
Chapter
Chapter 1 or 2?
chapter 1. We did 7 yesterday.
Okay. So calculus syllabus is over? Yes?
Just last topic is left.
Okay. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So here we discussed about some basic definition about graph order. Graph is just the structure that contains the discrete structure that contains what is its arm, HZ, and this HZ is coming from the relation defined in the vertex set. So basically, it is vertex set and a relation. Okay. Then order is the number of vertices, size the number of edges, endpoint you already know, loop, same endpoint, multiple edges, same pair of endpoints. On simple graph, we don't have any multi-edge or loop, right? In multi-graph, multi-edges are present, may be present, right? But no loops. In pseudo-graph, loops may be present as well as multi-edges. Then we discuss about the complement. Complement in which sense? In the sense of edge set. Okay, vertex set for complement is same. Vertex set for G complement, G bar is same as vertex set of G, but we defined this complement that in sense of edge set. That is, whenever any edge is present in G, that edge will not be present in G complement. Or you can just say UV will be adjacent in G complement if and only if they are not adjacent in G, and they will not be adjacent over here if and only if they are adjacent in G. So, got it? So tell me if your size is M for a graph. For a graph, this size is given as n order graph. Size is m. Then what can you say about G complement, order and size?
N will be same.
N
Will be same.
its
The
size, that is
the
order. What about size?
size may or may not be same.
May not be same, but can you find the exact size?
No, ma'am.
Anyone else?
Size of complete graph with same vertices minus edges of the graph G.
Yes, and size of complete graph with order n is given by NC2, na? Clear? So this will be order for complete graph. It is this one, and size for complete graph will be NC2 minus M. Because from complete graph we need to remove all other edges, right? All the edges which are present in G. Okay, if we take the union of G and G complement, we are getting the Kn complement, Kn, right? N is the order of G. Okay, the complete graph for the same order, right? Clear? So edges means whichever edges are present over here, those are not present over here, and vice versa. Vertices will be present. Clear? So in the same way, can you tell me if the degree of any vertex is given as in G is given as R, or it may be given that this is R regular graph. Then for all the vertices it will be R, and in particular if for one vertex it is given as degree is R, then what do you say about G, the degree of V in G complement? Yes? Tell me. Yes? Am I audible or not? Many of you are facing problem.
Yeah, I'm audible.
Okay. Yeah. What about the degree of V in G complement? If degree of any vertex in G is given, what can you say about complement? Yeah. Tell me. Anyone? No idea? Okay, as I just told you that if we have edge over here in G, means any vertex is incident with any edge, that will not be incident with that edge in the complement, right? Or you can just say you can make this Kn out of G union with G complement, right? And this is the disjoint union, you can just say. Here means in case of edges, in sense of edges, it's the disjoint union, right? So if any vertex over here has degree R, then what can be the maximum possible degree of a vertex in Kn? Right? That should be the vertex degree in Kn. What can be the maximum possible degree of a vertex?
N minus 1.
N minus 1 is the maximum possible degree of a simple graph, right? And simple graph we are discussing all. So n minus 1 is in Kn and R is in G. Then G complement will be left with this minus this, right? Because both degree of this one B in G plus degree of B and G complement, this makes n minus 1, right? Because you don't
Yes,
repeat any agents. So what you can say? Degree of B in G plus degree of B in G complement. This is your n minus 1. Okay, for a simple graph. Is that clear? So you can just tell about this degree. N minus 1 minus R, this would be the degree. Clear? For example, if
Yes,
I say in a 10 order graph, the degree of any vertex is given as 4, then what can you say about its degree in G complement? N is given as 10 and in G the degree is given as 4. Okay, N is 10, in G degree is 4. Then what can you say about degree of G, the same vertex in G complement?
5.
5, right? This will be for this one 10 minus 1, n minus 1, maximum possible degree n minus 1 minus this one. So it will be 5. Clear? Yeah, next is your clique. Clique of a pairwise, this is the set of a pairwise adjacent vertices. So what do we represent this clique number? What is the representation? Notation of clique number. And what do you understand by clique number? Clique is set of pairwise adjacent vertices. And what about clique number? We have done that, right? Yeah. Clique number. Yeah. Am I audible? Clique number, anyone? किसी को तो पता होगा. Yes, Asutosh. Asutosh Ranjan. Clique number. Shivam.
Cardinality of the set of which contains the highest number of cliques.
So clique number is the cardinality of set of pairwise adjacent vertices. So it should be maximum set of, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And it is denoted by omega, right? That is your clique number. And independence number. Independent set is a set of pairwise non-adjacent vertices. Set of pairwise non-adjacent vertices is your independent set. And if you take the maximum set of that is set of maximum number of, you can just say, if you take maximum cardinality, this independent set, maximum independent set gives you alpha, right? That is the cardinality of maximum independent set. That is maximum number of pairwise non-adjacent vertices in a graph. So I hope you can calculate. Yeah. Then we discuss about Kn, Cn, Pn. So tell me the order and size for Kn, Pn, Cn. Order is n. What is the size for all these graphs? Kn is defined as where every two vertices are adjacent. Pn is a path where every two consecutive vertices are adjacent and there is no adjacency for last and first vertex. Okay, this is not the closed one, no repetition. But in Cn, there is a repetition of first and last. That means last vertex will be also adjacent to first one. That is, closed path will be Cn. Yeah, tell me about size of An, Cn, Pn. Yeah.
Size of gain n into n minus 1 by 2.
N into n minus 1 by 2, or you can just say nc2. Right? You need two vertices for each edge. So total number of how many edges exist in C2? For Cn? For
Pn
Cn,
size will be n.
it's n.
n.
For Pn,
N minus 1.
n minus 1. So these are the sizes of these. So you can easily calculate. Yeah, then connected. Connected graph is the graph where every two vertices are connected. Okay, but in the complete graph, every two vertices are adjacent. Clear? What is the difference between connected and complete? In connected one, there may not be adjacency for between every two vertices. Clear? For example, Cn is connected, Pn is connected, but not complete. Clear? Every complete graph is a connected one. Is it true? Complete implies connected.
Yes, ma'am.
True. What about converse?
No, ma'am. May or may not be true.
Counterexample?
Any cycle.
Yeah, we have cycle Pn, many graphs. Yeah, then a graph which is not connected is known as disconnected. Not connected means there exists at least one pair of vertices with such that no path exists. Clear? No path exists. So you can just say over here, this to this, you don't have any path, this to this. So there is no connectedness between these two components and these two parts of G where we have maximal connected graph. Right? This is known as component. Clear? Next is bipartite. For a bipartite graph, you are able to write Vg, you are able to partition Vg as a disjoint set of x and y. Okay, these are disjoint means that is not common. Okay, you can partition means you can write as the union of these. And this x and y, these forms the bipartition of Vg. And as you can just see over here, even cycle, all the even cycle will be bipartite, and any graph which contains only even cycle, that will be bipartite, and odd cycle are not bipartite. So any graph which contains odd cycle as a subgraph, that will not be a bipartite graph. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So here you can just remember any non-trivial graph should be this. Is bipartite if you know it contains no odd cycle. Clear? Then complete bipartite. Till now we were discussing about just bipartition of Vg. Now we are having bipartition of Vg such that all that is Vg you can write as x union y, x disjoint union with y. Okay, that is these are independent set x and y. And just that every vertex from X is adjacent to all the vertices over here and vice versa. Right? That will be your complete bipartite graph, or you can just say bi-clique graph. And this is denoted by KRS. What is the order in size for this graph? What is the order in size for this graph? Yes?
Order R plus S.
Order R plus S. Yes. Size.
R plus SC2.
R plus SC2. Are you sure? You're not connecting the elements from X. Means X is independent, Y is independent. Then how is it possible? You are saying this KR comma S is same as KR plus S. Is it? Complete graph of order R plus S. Is it? No, it's not the case. So what should be the size of complete bipartite graph? Yeah.
R dot S.
Yes, R into S. It will be R into S. Because you have every vertex from here, X and Y you have, right? And one vertex is adjacent to, suppose R vertex is over here, S vertex is over here. So one vertex is adjacent to S vertices, next is also adjacent to S vertices, and so on. There are R number of vertices. Means one vertex is incident with S number of edges. Then second one. So S plus R times. So it will be R into S. Okay? These are the...
Explain odd cycles.
Yeah.
Odd cycles, man.
Yeah, what you said, you're not totally
There is odd cycles, then that.
Yeah, there is no cycle, obviously.
Okay, man.
Means odd cycle is not present. Cycle will be present. Means in whenever you have M, R and S at least 2, then you have the cycles, right? And only even cycle will be the part of KRS, right? Even cycle can present in KRS or KMN. Okay?
Okay, man.
Yeah. K per type means into K independent set, and K complete K per type it is, you have kind of this type. Means you have here bipartite means 2 sets were there. Okay, with cardinality R and S. K will be then A1, A2 and so on up to AK cardinality. Here, chromatic number we have done. The minimum coloring. For even cycle it was 2, and for odd cycle it is 3. Then map coloring also we have done. Planar graph we have done. Yeah, matrices. 2 types of matrices we have done in case of graph. This undirected graph and directed graph, that is adjacency and incidence matrix. So adjacency matrix are this graph we are considering as loop-less graph. Okay, there is no loop. We can consider only multi-graph or simple graph with the vertex set V1, V2, up to Vn, and L set is up to Em, even and so on up to there are M number of edges present. Then adjacency matrix is defined as Aij. Aij is your ijth element for Ag. That is the number of edges between vertex Vi and Vj. Okay. how many number of edges present in this one. That you write as Aij. Clear? So this will be obviously n cross n vertices, that is n cross n matrix you will be having, right? So as this graph is undirected, so the number of edges between Vi and Vj will be same as Vj and Vi, right? Will be same as Vj and Vi. So Aij will be same as Aji. Is that clear? In case of undirected graph. So here it is symmetric. Wherever we have ijth element is same as jith element, then we means to say transpose of the matrix is same, right? So that becomes symmetric. Clear? So if you have some directed graph, this to this we have, but this direction as this one, then how you define this AZ? How we define it? For directed graph, you have again the same thing, but you will be having Vi, the number of directed edges starting from with the head Vj and tail Vi. That will be your Aij. You will be counting all the edges from Vi to Vj. Okay, that will be your Aij. And number of edges from Vj to I, that will give you Aji. Okay, so in general, for a directed graph, this may not be equal, these. Okay, so the matrix, corresponding matrix may not be symmetric. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
And similarly, you can have the incidence matrix. Incidence matrix is defined as n by m, m number of columns, n number of rows. So this is Mij, where for undirected graph it is if Ai is adjacent with, or you can just say incident, Ai and Ej, the vertex Ai and the edge Ej are incident, then you have 1, otherwise you have 0. Means if the Ai is not the endpoint of Ej, then you have 0. Otherwise, if Ai is one of the endpoint or one of the endpoint of Ej, then you have this is 1. In the case of directed graph, what we discussed, this will be +1, -1 and 0. If there is no relation, then it is 0. And whenever Ai and you have Ej, whenever Ej starts with Ai, that is, it is out, right? This edge is coming out of the Ai. Isomorphism is any two graph, if they are having same structure, they may have drawn like these two. They may have drawn differently, but you can redraw one graph that will look like as the other one. These are known as isomorphic graph. So there exists a 1:1 correspondence that preserves the adjacency. That will be your adjacency, and this 1:1 correspondence means this bijection will be between the vertex set. Okay, and adjacency means whenever any two vertices are adjacent in G, then their images will be adjacent in H. Okay, and images will be adjacent, and if not adjacent, the images must not be adjacent. So that is your adjacency and non-adjacency condition. If any bijection that preserves this one, you define like this only, then you say that isomorphism exists, and hence these two graphs are isomorphic. The matrix is known as isomorphic jump, okay, and the graphs are known as isomorphic, and this is symbol. Clear? Means all the structural property are same for isomorphic graphs. You can see, you can check over here whether adjacent, these are isomorphic or not. G1, G2, G3, G4. Yes.
G1, G2, G4 are isomorphic.
G1, G2, G4, these are isomorphic. So adjacent, and which correspondence you will define? U, V, W are having mapped to which vertices in G2? Tell me the map. Yes.
1, 3, 5.
1, 3, 5. Anything you can just do. 1, 3, 5 or 2, 4, 6. UVW. Okay. 1, 3, 5. As these are also independent. These are independent. And as you can just say, 1 is adjacent with all the other 3. So here also U is adjacent to all other. So these are 2, 4, 6. So hence, in the similar way, UVW, U map to this vertex and this vertex and this vertex. Okay, these are non-adjacent. Means these forms the independent set. That's why, and the other one also forms the independent set, and this one vertex is adjacent to all other 3. Hence, these are, you can define isomorphism, and these are isomorphic graphs. Why not G3?
It is not bipartite.
It is not bipartite. The other 2 graphs are bipartite. So this is not bipartite. Why not? There exists odd cycle. Okay. Now, when 2 graphs are isomorphic, then most of the structural property are same. Okay. But if you want to show G is not isomorphic, see, to show isomorphic, 2 graphs are isomorphic, you need to find a map, 1, 1 onto 1. But to show non-isomorphic, you can just give any of these counterexamples. Means if isomorphic, then all the property holds. But if any of the property does not hold, any of these property does not hold, then you can say G is not isomorphic. Clear? So this is P implies Q is given, and a negation Q implies negation P will be very useful if you want you want to show G and H are non-isomorphic. Means if any one of these properties fails, then these fail to be isomorphic. Clear? If order not same, then directly you can say these are not isomorphic. Size not same, connected or disconnected. One is connected, another is disconnected. You can say these are not isomorphic. And one is bipartite, another one is non-bipartite. You can also say this is not isomorphic. And same way, if degree sequence or degrees of the corresponding vertex does not match, while defining the map, you also preserve the degree, right? Degree of the vertex U will be same as degree of its image. Here,
in G2, there is 7 cycles. So how it is bipartite in G2, graph 2, the upper example?
Yes, G2.
There is also 7 cycles.
7?
Odd cycle, matlab, any odd number of cycles.
Where? This is C6, na?
Yes, ma'am.
Not C7. You getting it? You don't have any odd cycle. You have C6, C4. You have C4.
Yes,
and this C4, this C4, this C4, and this outside is C6.
Then, ma'am, whole total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 will Don't
Yes.
count the
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then coming back to 1. So this is your C6 na hexagon.
yes, ma'am.
This is bipartite, but this is not bipartite.
Okay, ma'am.
You don't find here C4 exists, but C4 के साथ साथ C3 या C5 भी तो exist कर रहा है, right? So in bipartite graph, no odd cycles would be present. Either no cycle is present
Okay,
or
ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
only even cycles are present. Clear? Then it's a self-complementary graph. Self-complementary is means to say that it's same as its complement. Okay, same as means isomorphic. So graph is said to be self-complementary if and only if you have the graph and its complement are isomorphic. So examples are P4, C5. These are self-complementary. Another one is this bull. This is also self-complementary. Its complement is this one, and that is also you can read as same. And non-self-complementary are means which are not self-complementary. These are many. These are the names of these graphs. Then decomposition. Decomposition is just we are decomposing the graph into list of subgraphs. Is that each edge appear in exactly one subgraph. Okay, vertex may repeat, but edges should not repeat in any two subgraphs. You are decomposing a graph into the subgraphs such that no edges repeats in any two subgraph. Clear? For example, in K5, K5 can be decomposed as two C5s. One is outside C5 and one is inside star part. So here vertices obviously for same for both C5s, but none of the edges repeat. Clear? Similarly, you can also decompose this K4 into two P4. Also in case of P3, also it adds P2. Okay. So K4 you want, this is one P4, right? Starting with this one and this one. And another is this one. Clear? And you can also how many P4 exist in case of K4? Yeah. How many P4 exist in case of K4? There are two P4 exist now. How do you calculate this? The number of whatever P4, P3 exist. Yeah. How do you say without calculating, that is without decomposing, that if P3 exists, there will be how many P3? The number of P3s. Yeah. Tell me. Anyone?
By drawing.
Yeah. By because there does not these edges are not repeating, right? So you can divide total number of size by the size of whatever you want. So size of this one will be 3 na, and size of K4 is 6. 6 divided by 3. So if P4 exists, if at all P4 exists, there will be 2 number of P4. If at all P3 exists, so P3 size is 2, there will be how many? 3 number of P3. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So like this, you can decompose in many graphs in some given graphs. Yeah. When you say self-complementary graph, self-complementary, C5 is self-complementary, and over here you can just see self-complementary. Self-complementary, how we find a graph? Complement the edges of the graph. We can get graph G complement. We can get edges of Kn minus edges of G. Clear? And here we are not repeating the edges, means self-complementary. G is same as its complement. That means Kn has a decomposition consisting of copies of this one and this one. Both are same now. So you can just say G and G. And we can also say Kn decomposes into G and G complement always. Right? Right? Kn decomposes into G and G complement. And if it is self-complementary, means to say we can replace this G complement with G. So means to say Kn decomposes G and Z, two copies of G. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
And also you can check it whether Kn also decompose with Kn minus 1 and one star part K1 in a minus 1. Okay, as you can see over here, this is your K2 and the rest part is your K12. Okay, that's it. Next is we discuss about path, cycle and trail. First, walk. In walk is just the finite sequence of vertices. So that every two consecutive vertices are adjacent. Vertices as well as edges may repeat. Then we discuss about the length of walk. Length of walk is the number of edges present in the walk, whether it repeats or not. If it repeats, we will also count the multiplicity of the repetition, right? Okay. In trail, no repeated edges are there. And in circuit, it's closed trail. Closed trail means first and last vertex is same and without repetition of edges. Path, no vertex repeated, and if no vertex is repeated, obviously then you can say no edges are repeating. So every path become a trail. Okay, every path become a trail. Then we have cycle. Closed path is known as cycle. In that one, we have first and last vertex is same. Otherwise, that is, you can just say C4 is this one, right? A, that's a D, C, B, A, and then again we are coming back to the vertex where we started. So length of this one is, so whenever k number of vertices are present in any walk, then length of this one will be k minus 1. Clear? And for every U2V walk, you can always find a U2V path by deleting the repeated vertex if at all repeats. Component, I already defined that maximal connected graph will be known as component. And the number of components, sometimes you might find C of G, sometimes we are representing it by K of G. So that depends. You can also you can only remember the definition, and likewise you can count the number of components. Okay, and for Kn complement there are n components, so all n vertices will be there. Okay, for example here 1 2 3 4 components, and whenever connected there will be only one component. Okay, and you can starting with Kn complement, that is starting with n vertices, you can find any graph with any number of components, that is with k size, and that will be having at least n minus k number of components. You can start with n vertices, for example 3 vertices. Now you can form any graph with k size, okay, with the given size, and that will be having at least n minus k component. Then we discuss about cut vertex. Cut vertex is that increases the number of components. Okay, then cut edge is that increases the, again same thing, number of component of G minus E. If we remove it, if we cut it out, we are getting more number of components. Okay, this is also known as bridge. That's it. And for Pn, Kn, Cn, and for these graph I have listed over here. number of cut vertices for Pn, it is, except the leaf part, the outer part, maximum it can be. For Pn it is n minus 2, and for tree maximum it can be n minus 2. Clear? And number of cut edge. For tree, every bridge is a cut, and that is every edge is a cut edge, and this was not the part of your syllabus. Yeah. Then we defined induced subgraph. A subgraph is to be induced if you have u and v. If you pick any two vertices from H and uv present in, whenever uv edge present in G, then you check in H, that is also present. Means to say, here this implies this, right? So if we want this one, means you take any two vertices from H. If they are non-adjacent in H, they should also be non-adjacent in G. Okay, non-adjacent in G. If this is not occurring, then that graph is not induced subgraph. Then we discuss about spanning subgraph. This is just a subgraph of G with the same vertex set. Okay. Then we have done that every edge is a bridge or cut edge if and only if it belongs to no cycle. No cycle is present, then you have bridge. Otherwise, no. Bipartition we have already done. Union. There is a difference between union and decomposition. In decomposition of the graph into subgraph, there is no repetition of edges occur. But here, edges may repeat. That means in this one, these two components, these two parts, G1 and G2, you have these two repeated, but finally you are having just two edges. Okay. That means you just take the union of all the vertices and union of all the edges. That is defining your union. Clear? Union of the graphs. And when you have both different, then obviously union will be different. So you can just see over here, when G is expressed as union of the subgraph, we are expressing this as the union of subgraph. Any edge may belong to many of them. Any edge, this one may belong to this one as well as this one. Same is happening with this one. But in decomposition, this does not occur. Okay, in decomposition, no edges repeat. Clear? Then we discuss about Eulerian circuit. Many times we have revised it, right? If it contains all the edges and if necessary and sufficient condition is degree of all the vertices is even. If not Eulerian graph, you can at least find the Eulerian trail, that is open trail, open Eulerian trail, and the condition is exactly two odd vertices will be there, and even vertex, even degree, odd vertex, odd degree. Okay, maximal path, that path, anything, whatever maximal, that cannot be extended. Okay, that means which is not contained properly in any other longer path, that cannot be extended. So now you have this, if every vertex of a graph G has a degree at least 2, every vertex is having a degree at least 2, then G contains a cycle. Obviously, you can take whenever at least 2 degrees there, you can take any 2 edges incident to this one, so that cycle formation occurred, right? This is done. Eulerian if and only 4 vertices are even. Yeah, that's it. Then we did convex bridge problem. Any doubt in 1.1 and 2? No?
No.
Here we defined degrees, vertex degrees, and we also define the graphic sequence, right? Degree sequence. So degree is just number of vertices incident with that. Degree 0 means isolated vertex. Degree 1 means n vertex. In the tree, it is known as leaf. Maximum degree, maximum possible degree is n-1 in n degree, n order graph. It is denoted by this one. Maximum possibility. I'm just saying. I'm not saying del G will be always n-1. Okay. For example, in this graph, it is 4 maximum degree. This one, minimum degree can be 0. So minimum degree is at least 0. Maximum is at most n minus 1, and every other degree is lying between minimum and maximum. So the expression is minimum degree greater than equal to 0. This is less than equal to maximum degree less than equal to n minus 1. So here you can put degree of all the line between minimum and maximum. Regular graph, whenever you have degree is regular, that means same degree for all the vertices, then you have regular graph. Del z plus del z, and that is capital del z and small delta z, both will be same. Neighborhood, in case of simple, you have the same thing as we discussed, the degrees, right? Cardinality of neighborhood will be same as the degrees. Degree sum formula, this connects size and the degrees of the vertices. Every graph has even number of odd vertices, means whenever r degree or r regularity and n is the number of vertices with r degree. So that this r, n, I'm not saying this n is your order. N is the number of vertices with degree r. So at least one of these should be even, not both odd. Both odd is not possibility, right? That does not exist any graph. There exists no graph of odd degree with odd number. It means odd not possible. Clear? And any k regular graph with n vertices we had nk by 2 number of edges. We applied the degree sum formula, and this one also. Then k regular bipartite graph has same number of vertices in each partite cell. Then we, if we take this degrees, list of degrees in any order you can take, that is your degree sequence of that graph. Usually we write in non-increasing order. Okay, for all the graphs, degree sequence exists, but if you are able to find for a given sequence, given finite sequence, if you are able to find the simple graph, then it is graphical sequence. Okay, graphic sequence or graphical sequence. If there exists a simple graph, okay, corresponding to the given finite sequence. If you are not talking about simple graph, then you can always say that these are non-negative integer degree are always non-negative. These are the vertex degree of some graph, if and only if this is even. So this is done. If vertex degree, then summation will be even. This is by degree sum formula. What about the reverse condition? You are having this d1, d2 and so on up to dn, and such that you are given di is even. Then can you find some graph corresponding to that? This is the degree sequence. So that we can form, but that will be pseudo graph. Okay. Graphic sequence, if there exists any simple graph corresponding to a given sequence, given non-increasing sequence, you can just say non-negative, then it is graphic sequence, and no negative terms should be there in any sequence to be graphical. Okay, maximum degree also, this argument should hold. Okay, and even number of odd what values it should have, or you can just say it should not have odd number of odd values. Means odd number of odd degree not possible. Okay. Then we did Havells and Hakimi theorem. Here, this is if and only if case for S and S1. This is graphical if and only if this is graphical. So first, try to get the non-increasing sequence, non-increasing format of the sequence. If it is non-increasing, then what do? Pencil the first one, means you are deleting one vertex and all the edges incident to that vertex also deleted. And to those vertices, these edges are incident. For those, the degree will be subtracted by 1. If we are deleting this one, means these 3 edges gone. So degree of these vertices will be subtracted by 1, whatever the degree is. So D1 gone, this vertex gone, and next D1 number of times, जितने भी ये degree थी, इतने number of times we will be subtracting 1, and the rest 1 is seen as it is. If this is graphic, if and only if this is graphical, and this you can use recursively many times till until you are getting the graph, corresponding graph. That's it. Then directed graph. In directed graph, everything is directed. Whatever we have discussed in case of graph, everything is applied over here. Then weakly connected we have discussed. And strong digraph is strongly connected. Weakly connected means it's underlying graph. That means if you remove all the edges, that is all the directions and all the multi-edges are replaced by a single edge. Then you have underlying graph. If that is connected simply, then you have weakly connected. The digraph is weakly connected. And strongly connected means if there exists U to V path and as well as V to U path. Okay. Symmetric means there exists, if there exists U to V, then there should exist V to U. Okay. Symmetric implies strong components. If any graph is not strong, we can find the strong component of that. Strong component is maximal strong subgraph. Okay. Then vertex degree, out degree and in degree, the number of R that with tail V means that are coming out of the vertex that comprise of this degree, that contributes to the degree, out degree, and whatever coming to the vertex means with the head V, that is the degree in degree. Okay. In degree plus out degree for a single vertex, it can be maximum n minus 1. So less than equal to n minus 1. And similarly out neighborhood and in neighborhood, we had minimum out degree, minimum in degree, maximum out degree, and maximum in degree basis on maximum and minimum. Clear? And the same thing we had discussed in case of that graph, that is degree sum formula. For this one, degree sum formula is as out degree is only counted once and same is in degree, then we have this is equal to m. That's it. Adjacency and incidence we have already done. Then Eulerian diagraph. Eulerian diagraph is there exists Eulerian circuit directed, and there is one and only one condition, that is in degree is equal to out degree. Okay. And whenever this minimum in degree or minimum out degree, this is at least one, then there exists a directed cycle. Then orientation is just we are orienting each edges exactly once. Tournament is just the orientation of complete graph. So there are how many tournament, total number of tournament exists, 2 raised to power NC2. That's it. So for tournament, this is just consisting of Kn. So degree of in degree of V, in degree of V plus out degree of V. This should be.
Madam?
Yeah.
Madam, it's already 11:03 and my class is right at 11 o'clock.
Okay, sir.
Even 3 minutes matters to me a lot.
Okay, sir. I'm stopping it.
Is the slide visible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine.
Yes, sir.
So in the last class, we were talking about this Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. And over there, I told you that because of this Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction, we have two types of induced EMF. One of them is the motional EMF, that is actually produced because of the motion of a conductor. inside a magnetic field, or the reverse. There may be a stationary conductor with the magnetic field rotating. In both the cases, actually there is a change in the magnetic flux. So if there is a relative motion between the conductor and the magnetic field, it leads to motional EMF. The second type of EMF that we discussed is actually transformational EMF, which we also call it as induced EMF. And over there is absolutely no relative motion between the magnetic field and the conductors. The only thing is that we make use of a alternating current, or we make use of a current, time varying current, through one of the coils. And this coil, whenever this time varying current is flowing through it, what it actually makes is that it creates a time varying magnetic flux. And since the other coil is placed very near to it, so naturally this time varying magnetic flux created in the first coil is also going to link to the turns of the nearby coil. So in that way, what happens, since this magnetic flux created by the first coil is also linking the second nearby coil, therefore there is an induced EMF. So this induced EMF is also sometimes known as transformational EMF. So all these things we have studied in the last class, and over there we have also derived how this motional EMF, what is the equation or expression for the EMF generated by motional EMF. And over there also we talked about how this electric field and this magnetic field are going to be related to each other. So over there, in case of motional EMF, when we are talking, so over there I pointed out expression E is equal to V times of your B vector. Now VB is itself showing that the magnetic field is changing with respect to time, and it is because of that there is an electric field. So this is what we have studied, or we have learned in case of motional EMF. Next comes our transformational or induced EMF. And in this case, we have learned that your over here I can see the expression of your electric field directly is related to the change of the magnetic flux. So in this way also we can prove that whenever there is a change in the magnetic field, there is a production or generation of electric field. And whenever there is an electric field, rather a time varying electric field, obviously a current is going to flow. So this is how the EMF is actually generated in case of conductors, whether it is moving or stationary. And we utilize this concept in order to run the different loads when they are connected to these EMF sources. Another important thing that we discussed in the last class is the major difference between your electrostatic field and a time varying electric field. As I told you that your electrostatic field is basically a conservative electric field, over where if we are moving a point charge inside this uniform electrostatic electric field, that in that case the work done is independent of the path taken. And secondly, if we will start from a starting point, move in a path and terminate at the same starting point, that in that case the total work done is equal to 0. But there is a major difference in case of your time varying electric field that is actually produced by a time varying magnetic field. So what is the major difference? The major difference is that this time varying electric field is basically, or it is a non-conservative electric field. So what is such a field? Such a type of field, inside such a type of field, if we are moving a particle from one point to the other, it is absolutely not independent of the path taken. So if you are taking a longer path, the work done is more. If you are taking a shorter path, the work done is less. Whereas it was completely independent in case of your electrostatic fields. Second thing is that if we are moving inside a time varying electric field from a point A, moving in a haphazard manner or whatever path, and then returning back to the starting point A, then in that case the work done is not equal to 0. These types of time varying electric field are also sometimes known as non-electrostatic field. Please don't get confused with the word electrostatic. because electrostatic means the field is constant. In case of your time varying electric field, it is sometimes known as non-electrostatic field. So this word non itself shows that it is completely different from that of your electrostatic field. So this is what we have studied in the last class. Now today we will end this chapter with after learning the displacement current and the Maxwell's equation. Okay. So till now we have discussed about the current. Whatever we have discussed starting from chapter 1 till now, every time we have talked about the current, and that current was nothing but the flow of charges inside a conductor due to the presence of an electric field. So this is what we have actually meant by current. But truly speaking, your current itself are of three types, because all the currents or all the charges always does not flow through a ohmic medium or ohmic conductor. There are also various mediums through which the current can flow. One of the brightest example or most common example that you people use in your house is that of a fluorescent lamp. So inside the fluorescent lamp, at one end of the tube is usually 1.44 meter long. And in the tube at one end, you have a tungsten filament coil similar to that of your normal incandescent bulb. On the other end also you have a filament. Now what happens when we connect it in a proper circuit, because your fluorescent lamp has a different circuit. It consists of a ballast or a choke or an inductor. It consists of a starter. So all these things make up the fluorescent lamp. And over here, what happens when you are applying a very high potential difference between the two tungsten filaments located at either side, then what happens? From one end, the electrons, because of the thermionic emission, the electrons will start moving out and they will pass through a gaseous medium inside the tube. Actually, inside the fluorescent lamp, we have a mercury vapor maintained at a low pressure. And whenever these electrons will start passing through the mercury vapor, it is going to produce some exciting electrons which will strike with the scintillating material that is placed on the coating inside the periphery of the tube. So in that way, it is going to produce your visible range of light. Now the question is, inside the tube there is mercury vapor. So you just pure mercury, yes?
Sir, you said that the length of the tube is 1.44 meters. So is the length fixed because of some kind of resonance?
No. It is purely based on commercial thing. Why I am telling you? Because there are different types of tube light, and starting from T3, T5, T8 like this, they are commercially made. Now why we have choose 1.44? It is because we want to standardize the amount of light that is produced. Now, if you are going for 1 meter, it is going to produce 2820 lumen. So this is not a standardized figure. So rather what we use is that we make an optimal choice that if the length is 1.44, then it is not a very big length, but it is going to produce appropriate light of around 36 watt. So that light is around 3000 lumen. So this is the purpose why we have fixed it to 1.4 tubes which are of lesser size as well. So obviously those tubes are nowadays a little bit obsolete. Even your fluorescent tube is also obsolete because nowadays LED is taking its place. But previously we were using these tube lights and their length is fixed at 1.44. It is only because to standardize the output of the light. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So inside the tube, you have your mercury vapor. Now, if it was pure mercury or liquid mercury, then that is a different issue. It is a conductor. So there it will be, the currents will be passing through this mercury, means liquid mercury, and it is a ohmic conductor. But the truth is that inside the tube, there is actually mercury vapor. It is in a gaseous form. So it is not a ohmic conductor. So therefore, whenever through this medium, it is also forming a current. even your lightning. So you are seeing the lightning during the thunderstorms, and over there the clouds are bearing very heavy negative charges, and these negative charges tries to move to the ground in order to dissipate the extra charge and become neutral. So during this process, what they used to do, they used to pass through the atmosphere, and believe me, you all know that atmosphere is a non-conductor. Similarly, the spark plug that you are using in petrol IC engines, internal combustion engine. So in your petrol IC engines, there is a spark plug. There is one anode. The body is acting as the cathode, and in between them there is some gap, around 1 mm gap or 2 mm gap. So within this gap, only petrol and air vapor is there, and both of them are insulators. They are not conductors. So if you are applying a very high voltage, even there is a spark. So spark is nothing but continuation or flow of electrons through a non-ohmic conductor. So at least we come to the conclusion that current is not the same. Current, actually the very basic ideology of this current will depend on the medium through which it is passing. For example, when the current is passing through ohmic conductors, it is known as conduction current. The current that till now we have been thinking that this is the current. Now, whenever the current passes through a non-ohmic medium like air, vacuum, even vacuum or free space, because cosmic rays, your electromagnetic waves, they are all passing through this vacuum or free space, or your thunderstorms. So all these things over there, we don't have actually a conducting medium. They are almost all insulators or behaving like insulators. So in that case, they are passing through a non-ohmic conductor. So in that case, they are not known as conduction current, rather they are known as convection current. And believe me, the properties of conduction current, convection current, displacement current are absolutely different from each other. They have almost no similarity between them. Okay, so these two types, you are almost convergent. You are almost knowing all these types of things, because in your school days you have studied about that Rutherford experiment, that vacuum tube discharge. So at least some idea you have about this convection current. Conduction current, everybody knows. Whenever I will tell you current, they always mean it to be conduction current. So well and good, we have some idea about all these two things. Now the last one is the one which you will learn now. That is your displacement current. So what is a displacement current? So as I told you, that current passes through non-ohmic conductor, or when they passes through some dielectric medium, they basically behave as a convection current. But there are also certain ways by which current can pass. So current can also pass through an electric field. Okay, so we'll see an example and we'll study the different aspects of this displacement current. So for the timing, we can conclude that whenever current passes through an electric field, or the current that passes through an electric field, is known as displacement current. So basically in this world, we can classify the current into three basic types: convection current, conduction current, and the last one is displacement current. And as you can see, almost all their classifications are based on the type of media through which they used to flow or pass. Now, obviously, if current is of three types, obviously your current density or the corresponding current density will be of three types. So naturally, if I am talking about convection current, I will talk about convection current density. When I am talking about current, I will only talk about current density or conduction current density. If I am talking about displacement current, it is associated with displacement current density. And all these three are also quite different from each other, not only in their expression, but also in their properties. Convection current and convection current density, you people are not going to learn, because they are only meant for electrical and triple students. They will study where they will go for higher semesters. Regarding the conduction current, you will learn it till all your basic electrical papers are complete. Now, this is the first or last time you will study about this current density. Let us have a look. Now, in order to displacement current density, So what I have to do? Okay, just recall that as I told you that displacement current is the one which passes through an electric field. Doesn't matter whether it is a uniform electric field or it is a non-uniform electric field. It doesn't matter. Now, how to create an electric field, or what is the most common example of electric field? Best thing is that the dielectric medium inside a capacitor, because I have told you or we have learned that when I am going to insert a dielectric medium, whether it is a dielectric medium or it is a free space, if there is a insulating medium in between the two plates of the capacitor, then obviously when you are going to charge it, then there is a formation of electric field, or that energy supplied from the source is actually transferred into the capacitor and is stored in the form of electric field energy. Now obviously this electric field is going to exist in between the two conductors. So let us see for ourselves. We will take this example in order to understand the concept of current, displacement current and its corresponding displacement current density. Now just have a look. Don't go through the notes. Just have a look at this diagram. Okay. So as you can all see that here I am using a charging circuit. So basically I am having a source over here, DC source. There is a switch. So when I will close this switch, this is a closed path, and therefore the capacitor will start getting charged. Initially the capacitor was uncharged. Now the moment I will close the switch, the capacitor will start charging up. So charging up means it will start drawing a charging current. Okay, well and good. So practically if we will do this, then there is a capacitor, and on either side I will place some ammeter. Now, if I place the ammeter, you will see that the ammeter is showing a very large reading initially, and slowly the reading is reduced. You know the reason behind it. Because initially the capacitor behaves like a short circuit, taking the maximum current, and as the capacitor starts gaining this charge, the charging current decreases. Okay. So in this way, okay. Oh, sorry, I have some issue with the network. I lost it. Okay, Nisha, I'm right back over here. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So maybe there's some network issue. Actually, I was receiving a call. Instead of rejecting it, I received it. Okay. That's why there was a problem. Okay, fine. So where were we? So okay. Is the slide visible? Yes?
No, sir.
Slide is okay.
No, sir, not visible.
Okay. Now is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So as we are discussing that whenever the current or the current that flow passes through an electric field is known as a displacement current. So we'll take up the example of the capacitor, charging capacitor. So that, as I told you that inside the capacitor there is an electric field. So we'll use the example of capacitor in order to understand the concept of displacement current, and following that the displacement current density. Okay, just have a look at this circuit. So in this circuit, as you can see that I am having a source, and this source is actually connected to the capacitor in order to charge it. Now the moment I will close this switch, what happens? The charging going through this closed circuit, because it is absolutely a closed circuit, as you all can see. Now the thing is that this charging current is initially going to be very high, or as you can see I have two emitters over here. So you will see that the current initially it will shoot to a very high value, and slowly it will come to or it will decrease. Okay, slowly it will decrease. Now why it is so? Because I have already told you, or we have already discussed that the charging current IC is given by this expression, that is your E by R, e to the power minus T by RC. So naturally at time t equal to 0, so if I'll put 0 over here, this entire thing becomes 1. This entire exponential component becomes 1. So E by R, that is I0, is maximum. So as we progresses in time, the value of this exponential term is going to increase, and therefore since it is a minus term, so naturally it will start decreasing. So it means T by RC will start increasing, whereas the entire exponential term is going to decrease. So naturally this is going to follow this type of waveform. That means over here we are actually getting a charging current which is changing with respect to time, or it is a time varying current. Now, okay, till now it's okay. Now, as you can see, there are two emitters, and it is quite obvious that simultaneously both of them will be showing you the same result. For example, initially, let us say this emitter was showing 5 amps. This emitter will also show you 5 amps. Why? Because the entire setup is in series. So the same amount of charging current is flowing through both the emitters as well as the capacitor. Okay? So well and good, till now everything is okay. Now obviously as time progresses, the current is going to decrease. Let us say after 0.1 second it becomes 4 ampere. So obviously on this side also it will show you 4 ampere. After some time 3 ampere. Similarly over here there will be a decrease of current and it will become 3 ampere. So it is very sure that on the left hand side of the capacitor and on the right hand side of the capacitor the same charging current is flowing. This is okay. Now the problem arises when we will have a closer look at inside the capacitor. Now as you can see here, this is a wire and it is connected to the conducting plate of the capacitor on the left. Similarly on the right I am having the same conductor having this another negative conducting plate over here. Now both these things are all conductors, ohmic conductors, but if I will look inside the capacitor, I am actually finding a dielectric medium or an insulating medium. Now the problem is that insulating medium never allows the flow of current through it. They are known as insulators. Why insulator? Because they are not going to allow the flow of current. So if it is not going to allow the flow of current, then how come it is possible that the same charging current is actually flowing on either side of the capacitor? It is next to impossible. It is not possible if there is an insulator in between them and the current, for example, suppose inside your house there is a power supply and over here you will take one wire and over here you will keep some insulating material like paper or rubber, okay, and you will take another conductor over here, connect a bulb over here. So is it going to glow? No, it is not going to glow. It is not going to glow under normal condition, because in between these 2 points there is a insulating medium, and the purpose of this insulating medium is to prevent the flow of current. Similarly, I am also having an insulating medium over here, and its purpose is to prevent the flow of current. No, its not purpose is not to prevent the flow of current, but it is preventing the flow of current. But our arrangement says that on the emitter, on these 2 emitters, the same amount of current is flowing. And if we look at this arrangement also, as per our circuit theory, if we will apply KVL, then obviously the same amount of current is flowing. Then if I can say that no current is flowing through this insulator, then how come on one side there is IC, on the other side also there is the charging current? So it is a clear violation of our circuit theory. It is a clear violation of our conservation of charge. So everything is violated. That means somewhere something is missing out. So we'll see what is the explanation for this types of situation, because practically we can see that on both sides current is actually flowing, but our knowledge says that inside the 2 conductors of the capacitor there is an insulator. It is going to prevent the flow of current. If it is going to prevent the flow of current, how come the current is circulating in the circuit? Clear violation of all the rules that we have till now studied. Violation of your KVL, violation of conservation of charge. All these things are violated. Basic laws are violated. Then what is the explanation for that? Let us have a closer look. Just look over here. Okay, well and good. Here, okay. So when something is related to current, so let us do one thing. Let us apply this Ampere's law and see for ourselves what is actually taking place. So when I am talking about Ampere's law, I must have a circular path or an Amperean path. Now let us say on the left hand side there is this conductor is there. This conductor is carrying a current IC. Okay, so over here let us say I am having an Amperean path L1. So if I will put Ampere's law, well and good, it is very easy to find out. Mu 0 IC. So over here I can write mu 0 IC is equal to closed surface integral, that is your L1 B vector dot dl1 vector. Well and good, I can easily apply this equation and I can see that it is fulfilling. Well and good. So Ampere's law on this side, on this path is applicable. On this path is also applicable. So actually we don't have any problem on either side. Actually the problem arises inside the capacitor. Now, what is actually happening? Is there any current through this? Obviously there is a current through this. Otherwise the entire scenario or all the laws are going to be violated. That means there is some sort of flow of current through this insulating medium as well. But the problem is that we have always kept in our mind that the current is going to be conduction current. So up till this conductor, up till one of the plates of this capacitor, it is the conduction current. Now I am encountering an electric field and inside this also the current is going to flow, but this current is not like that of your conduction current. It is a different current having a different set of properties and different sets of behavior, and that current is known as your displacement current. Now if I will use the concept of displacement current, then obviously all our problems or all the violation of our basic laws are eradicated. Now you can see that the current IC is actually flowing up to the conductor, and after the conductor there is the dielectric medium, and through this dielectric medium the current ID is flowing. That is the displacement current. And once it reaches the other conductor, it again is converted to your IC, that is your conduction current IC. So this is the actual reason, or this is the thing, only explanation that we can do in order to prove that nothing is wrong in this circuit. And actually this is not a fictitious thing. This is actually the truth. This is the reality. So ultimately we are seeing that why this current ID is flowing. If you were a simple insulator and the field is not there, do this current will flow? The current is not going to flow. The example I showed you clearly shows that. For example, suppose here I am having a source and over here I will keep some insulating matter, or simply I will make a gap between the two contacts. So here is insulating medium. Under this condition, the bulb is not going to glow because there is no flow of current, because there is no electric field inside this air gap. Of course, there is some electric field, but the field strength is so low, or so means it is so much low, the electric field is having a magnitude so low that it is not going to allow the flow of this displacement current. That means at least we can conclude that the displacement current is also going to have some relationship with the strength of this electric field. So let us now see what is going to be the expression of this displacement current as well as the displacement current density. Okay, before that, let me make a clear-cut thing that mu0 I enclosed is equal to closed line integral of B vector dot dl vector. This equation we have already studied and we were telling that it is Ampere's law. But the truth is that it is a specialized case of Ampere's law. Why it is a specialized case? Because this particular expression of the law is only valid for steady DC current. Steady. Steady means it is going to be a straight line with parallel to the time axis. If the current is like this, then this equation is not going to be valid for that. Even though this is a DC current, but it is not steady. Okay, so it is this equation is only and only meant for steady DC current, not why it is steady DC current, because if it becomes alternating also this is not applicable. So this is only meant for currents which is having a waveform like this. Till now everything is clear to you all, or is there any doubt? Anyone with any sort of doubt? Okay, fine. Now let us move on to the next slide. Okay, now let us throw some light about what is happening inside this insulating medium and how this displacement current is flowing, what will be its expression, what is its form, how it is depending on the electric field. All this stuff we will try to find out. Now, as I told you that the charging circuit of a capacitor is a time-varying circuit. That means the current through the charging current through the capacitor, the voltage across the capacitor, the charge across the capacitor, all these are changing with respect to time. Okay, even though they are not alternating, that means they are not changing the polarity, but at least we can say all of them are changing with respect to time. So they are time varying current. So as you can see, IC is equal to I0 times e to the power minus t by RC, which clearly suggests that as time progresses, this value is going to change and therefore your value of IC is going to change. Now again, we have studied in the last chapter that whenever I am having a time varying current, it is going to produce an electric field. So this is the concept we just learned in the last class, that whenever there is a change in the current, there will be a change in the magnetic field. So whenever there is a change in the magnetic field, it leads to the formation of an electric field. Now we will apply that concept over here. Now, so as you can see over here, your IC is changing with respect to time. So naturally the magnetic field that it is producing in these conductors is going to change with respect to time. So if it is going to change with respect to time, then obviously it is going to lead to a electric field. Okay, time varying electric field. Now, inside this, obviously the electric field that is existing is going to be time varying electric field, because as I told you, the current IC is a time varying current. So this time varying current is producing a time varying magnetic field. Okay, so this time varying magnetic field is therefore producing a time varying electric field. Now let us consider the electric field inside this insulator. Now over here, let us try to apply this Ampere's law. Now before applying it, let us apply it on the left hand side. So on the left hand side, I have already told you what will be the equation. It is mu 0 IC is equal to closed line integral B vector dot dl vector. Okay. Similarly, so let me write it as L1. Similarly, on the right hand side also, you will get the same equation except that the path is different. So closed line integral L2 B vector dot dl2. Okay. So on these two sides, we can easily apply Ampere's law. Everything is going to be valid. Now, let us do one thing. Let us apply the Ampere's law over here in this closed path capital L. So over here, if we will do that, then what we are going to say? That your closed line integral of B vector D capital L vector is equal to mu 0 I enclosed. Okay. But here, as you can see, just look over here. But here, inside the dielectric I enclosed is 0, since dielectric medium does not allow passage of charging current. But this clearly violates the basic laws of conservation of charge. So here, your B vector cannot be 0. Why B vector cannot be 0? Because it is a time varying electric field. Because this current IC is producing this electric field E vector, which is time varying. Now this time varying electric field is going to produce a magnetic field, which is also time varying. So let us say this is your B dash vector. Okay. So the current IC is producing a time varying magnetic field B vector. Please note it. Don't get confused. Time varying charging current IC is producing a time varying magnetic field, that is B vector. This B vector is creating a time varying electric field E vector. Now this E vector will obviously going to produce another magnetic field. Let us say that it is B vector, B dash vector. Now obviously this B dash vector is not going to be 0. Fundamental thing, because electric field is not equal to 0. So over here we can say B vector is not equal to 0. Next, is the dl vector equal to 0? Never. Dl vector can never be equal to 0 because we have knowingly taken an infinitesimally small length. That means it is having some magnitude. So this factor also cannot be 0. So ultimately we come to know that this entire equation on the right hand side is not equal to 0. So if it is not equal to 0, that means mu 0 I enclosed cannot be 0. But we have written I enclosed is equal to 0. That means here we were only considering I enclosed to be the conduction current. But the truth is that it is inside a field. So as you can see, I enclosed is not equal to 0, but instead your I enclosed is equal to the displacement current ID. Thus, inside the dielectric medium, if we will apply this Ampere's law, then what we are going to get? The closed line integral L B vector dot dl vector is equal to mu 0 times of ID, where ID is your displacement current. Next, thus ultimately we can generalize this Ampere's law. Because till now, whatever Ampere's law we were studying, that was only based on steady electric current. Steady electric current means it is not going to change with respect to time. But over here, we have already talked about what is a time varying current, and is Ampere's law applicable to that? Yes, of course it is applicable. Because Ampere's law, it is a universal law. Universal law, therefore it is applicable to all types of current, not only DC current. So if that is the case, then we have to generalize this Ampere's law. So if we will generalize it, what we are going to get? B vector dot dl vector is equal to mu 0 times IC plus ID. That means mu 0 times of your conduction current plus your displacement current. And if we will extend it to the space itself, then we can also write it as convection current also we can write. But that is beyond the scope of your syllabus. So actually your Ampere's law is still over here. It is partial. Because this is physics paper, so we are not going to the details. So actually it says that B vector dot dl vector is equal to mu 0 times of the convection current plus conduction current plus displacement current. So that is the actual generalized form. But your syllabus says that this is the generalized form of Ampere's law. So please remember this one. Okay, so till now we have talked about the displacement current. We gained some idea about the displacement current. Now we have to find out what is the actual expression of this displacement current. Now, as I told you that this displacement current is actually depending on the electric field. Why? Because I have given you two examples. One in the case of a capacitor, the other one the case of this switch. So in the switch, what we have this air gap. So inside this air gap, that means this is a conductor, this is a conductor, and in between them there is air. So if there is air, then air is an insulator. So this is basically behaving like a capacitor. But the problem is that here no displacement current is taking place. If it is displacement current, then this bulb would have glown by itself. But this is not taking place. That means there is something about this displacement current which it still need to be explored. So let us now see what is that. Are you all understanding what I am saying? Or is there any doubt? Yes? Someone will respond?
Yes, sir, we are understanding.
Sir,
Are you understanding?
Switch one, how the current is flowing through the switch.
So I am basically telling that the two contacts of a switch are also going to behave like a capacitor. But over there, the air is the insulating medium. But still then, there is no flow of current, because if there is an insulating medium like air, then obviously there is an electric field. So if there is an electric field, current should have passed, but current is not passing. Now, why is it so? We will see it right now.
So
okay.
Maybe because the contacts, the terminals are very far away from each other.
Yes, that is one of the reasons. The second thing is that the capacitance is so low that your electric field created is very, very feeble. Very, very feeble. So it cannot lead to the flow of magnetic displacement current. Okay, so that is the main reason. Now look over here. So at least this is for the timing, let us say this is the generalized form of Ampere's law. Now let us try to find out the expression for this displacement current. So for a capacitor, so here we are using a capacitor. So we know that in case of capacitor, Q is equal to C times or capacitor times your voltage V. Now since let us consider that we are using a parallel plate capacitor over here. So C is equal to epsilon A by D. So we have replaced this C by this expression. Similarly, your voltage can be written in terms of your electric field. So over here, we can write the voltage of the capacitor across the terminals of the capacitor as the electric field multiplied with the distance between the two conductors of the capacitor. So obviously, this D and D will get cancelled out. So what I am left with is epsilon A E. Now what is this? This is nothing but epsilon. Now what is AE? It is nothing but your phi E. Okay. So ID. So Q is equal to this much. Now what is ID? ID can also be written as dQ by dt. Now we know that there is no charge flowing. So how can we will write dQ by dt? Now since we have assumed it to be flowing through the capacitor, because in the entire expression while applying this Ampere's law also we have it is a conduction, and ultimately we come to know that it is your displacement current. That is the reason why we will assume that this ID is equal to dQ by dt. Now if this is the case, so in place of this Q we will replace it with epsilon phi E. So this is nothing but coming to be this much. So over here you can clearly see that your ID is equal to epsilon times the change in the electric field. That means if there is no change in the electric field, if there is no change in the electric field, then there will be no displacement current. Okay. Now just have a look. Suppose there is a DC current or DC voltage. So there is, let us revisit that example. So I'll replace that alternating voltage source by means of this DC source. And over here, I will have the two contacts of the switch. And Sudhanshu was telling the gap is quite high. Now let us do one thing. Let us place this gap very close to each other. Very, very close to each other. Even under this condition also, there is not going to be any displacement current. Why? Because in between these two, even though there is an air gap, but still then the electric field is not time varying. So if the electric field is not time varying, so obviously displacement current cannot arise. Okay. Anything else you want to clear? Anyone? Any other doubt you have? Okay. So this is the expression of your displacement current. Now displacement current is always, every current is always associated with a current density. So let us now talk about this current density or displacement current density. So we know that your current density J is equal to I, sorry, not ID, it is, sorry. Okay, so over here we know that current density J is given by I by A, that is the current flowing through a cross-sectional area. So similarly, your displacement current density is also defined as J D vector is equal to I, that is your displacement current by your area. Another important and very interesting thing, let me tell you, unlike your conduction current or convection current, your displacement current is a vector quantity. So this is the best thing about it. It is a vector quantity. So your book is not mentioning it as a vector quantity, but it is truly, it is a vector quantity. Okay. So over here, as you can see, I have got the expression of ID. Now if I will only divide it by A, then I can get the expression for your displacement current density. So epsilon dEA by dt is nothing but your ID divided by A. So this one reduced down to epsilon d by dt, dE vector by dt. So ultimately your current density J D vector is equal to epsilon d E vector by dt. So this is your displacement current density. Now current density for all the three types of current is always a vector quantity. As you can see, convection current density, it is a vector quantity. Rho v, that is the volume charge density, into this U vector, that is the velocity at which the particles are traveling in the non-ohmic conductor. So this is not there in your course, so I am not discussing. Conduction current density, we have studied about it. It is nothing but J vector is equal to sigma times of E vector. So this thing we have studied. Now ultimately we'll replace this by its original one. That is, this one is equal to epsilon times So this one is equal to epsilon times dE vector by dt. Okay, so in this way every expression is now complete. So Everything regarding this displacement current and displacement current density is now over. If you have any sort of doubt, please clear it right now. I know this is a new concept to you all because till now we have only been dealing with this conduction current. So please don't get confused with this conduction current. There is something also known as displacement current, and displacement current is nothing but the current flowing through any electric field. Okay, any doubt? Or should I move further? Okay, fine. So ultimately, the generalized form of Ampere's law turns out to be this much. Closed line integral B vector dot dl vector is equal to mu 0 times of the conduction current plus epsilon d phi E by dt. This equation is applicable to both AC and DC currents. Now let us move on to the extreme last part of this chapter, that is Maxwell's equation. Okay. So Maxwell equation, as I told you, are of 4 types. So there are 4 equations, and none of these equations actually Maxwell have devised it. So first 2 laws are Gauss law, the third law is Ampere's law, and the last law is your Faraday's law. And what actually why Maxwell's equation is so famous? It is because now Gauss independently found out his equation. Ampere independently did his research and found out this equation. Faraday did his research and he himself individually devised this equation, Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. But it was it was Maxwell who could see the beauty or the entire relationship between these 4 laws. And believe me, these 4 laws are also known as universal law of electromagnetic induction. So actually the truth is that you people are not going to study much about the electromagnetic theory, but this is a very, very interesting theory paper, and this is the one which is actually going to explain everything, every detail, starting from traditional electrical engineering till the most modern communication engineering. So everything, any development that is being done are all based on these 4 laws. Now you will use these 4 laws to explain this electromagnetic field theory. You can explain it, you can make use it to learn about circuit theory. You can make use of these 4 laws in order to understand the concept of electromagnetic waves, microwave, your mobile waves. All these things can be explained only by means of these 4 laws. But the truth is that it is only Maxwell who actually filtered out all the different laws and bring out these 4 laws outside and told that they are all interrelated to each other. That is the reason why they are known as the universal laws of electromagnetic induction, electromagnetic field, which is otherwise also known as Maxwell's equation. Now, the first equation, as you can see, is Gauss law for electrostatic field. Okay, so we have already studied about this. What does it say? Closed surface integral of E vector dot ds vector is equal to Q enclosed by epsilon 0. So we have studied this one. Similarly, Gauss law for magnetostatic field, we have studied that closed surface integral of B vector dot ds vector is equal to 0. And I have told you the reason behind it, because a monopole cannot exist. Now, just now we derived this Ampere's law. And what Ampere's law was saying, closed line integral of B vector dot dl vector is equal to mu 0 times the conduction current plus displacement current. And the last one is your Faraday's law. Now, how these 4 laws are related to each other and how all these laws are similar to each other, that we will study in the next one, that is significance of this Maxwell equation. Okay, so time is up. Now in the and complete this in full, then I will show you and I will start teaching the next chapter. Okay, so please be online.